This is Salam Media coming to you live from South Africa.
The time is just gone 8:45 a.m. and it's time now to look at the draft procurement bill. Now, the question that is raised is, does this bill truly address the problem and a big problem in this country we all know is to fight corruption, and procurement has been under the radar, it's been under scrutiny for a very, very long time. For one simple reason, it is the single largest corruption risk in South Africa at this point in time and in many other developing countries. And when one just looks at simple scenarios in terms of government procuring, buying goods and services, and how often have we not heard just one simple fact, preferential procurement, when one looks at the corruption, when one looks at nepotism, when one looks at things like even pricing, for instance, and we've seen it even now in the time of pandemic, in the time of crisis, the insane prices that government had actually paid in terms of tenders for things like sanitizers, for masks, and everything else. And this is one area that has been spiraling completely out of control. And this morning, we're joined by Kirsten Pearson, who is a steering committee member of the Budget Justice Coalition and a research fellow with the Rural Health Advocacy Project. Kirsten, good morning to you. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, and good morning to the listeners. Thanks for having me on the show.
Right, Kirsten, let's talk about this single largest corruption risk. And we've seen that even organizations like Transparency International, they've made certain assumptions, they've had certain estimates talking about the spend of public money or public funds in buying goods and services from the private sector.
Yes, so we've just had the midterm budget, and we've seen that the expenditure ceiling is around 1.7 trillion rands, and you can imagine if government is going to spend upwards of half of that on procuring goods and services, that you really, really need to make sure that you're plugging any holes in the procurement regulations so that you can deal with that corruption risk.
Yes. Now, let's talk about some of these holes that need to be plugged, Kirsten.
Sure. So the Treasury has released a draft procurement bill, and that procurement bill, unfortunately, is not as strong as what it could be. In the procurement bill, we're seeing that there's a failure to define confidential information. And what that does is it allows government departments to hide because civil society and activists need to be able to request from government, we want to see the contracts, we want to see transparency in your procurement systems, and they are able to hide because the procurement bill doesn't define confidentiality.
Yes, and clearly, from what you're just saying and talking about confidentiality, and this obviously has been very dubious, but we have actually found a lot when one looks at the testimony that has come out to the commission, and particularly when we heard people like Angelo Agrisi and the whole question surrounding Bosasa and corruption in general relating to government tenders, Kirsten.
Yes, so sunlight, as they say, is the best disinfectant. When you can see what's going on in procurement systems, you won't be getting the issues, hopefully, of the Bosasa bags and, the kickbacks for bribes for getting tenders fixed and so on, because it's more clear to people what is going on in the procurement of goods and services. And so as part of the Budget Justice Coalition, we're advocating for open procurement systems. And we want to see an e-procurement portal. Well, government does have a portal, but we'd like to see more information put onto that portal as a matter of course, not just for the COVID procurement.
Also, Kirsten, knowing And this is not this is no secret. It's common knowledge of the problems that we are experiencing as far as government procurement goes, to the extent that even the Auditor General has identified these clear signs of overpricing, unfair processes, potential fraud. And this entire question surrounding supply chain and supply chain management within the government procurement sector. This has been problematic for a very, very long time. And yet we come up now with legislation that still is not sufficient or strong enough to address these issues.
Yes, year in and year out, the Auditor General's reports are very clear in what the problems are. And it's just so frustrating that each year it seems to regress and not get better. So it's quite frustrating for the South African public that, the problems are known, but they don't seem to be addressed. And this procurement bill really, really is an opportunity to do that. And it's also not too late to amend the procurement bill. It's still in a draft form. A lot of civil society organizations and members of the public have made submissions. The Treasury says it's around 200 submissions with over 3,000 comments that they've received. And so we're really hoping that they're going to be taking those comments into consideration and not brushing them under the table.
I think one thing that has always struck me, Kirsten, is when it comes to collecting money, we seem to be very efficient. When one looks at SARS, for instance, very, very efficient, very aggressive as well in terms of collection, making sure that, money comes in to the extent sending final demands. And we've also heard of SARS getting even stronger. And yet, when it comes to the other side, when it comes to spending money, we seem to be having this problem, or we even lack the systems to basically to capably monitor spending and to highlight the problems when it comes to spending.
Yes, I would totally agree with that. We need to see much better real-time financial management monitoring. It's not acceptable that, after the fact we find out that the procurement has been subject to corruption when we knew that was going to happen. So we need these monitoring systems that are far more improved than what they are at the moment. And the other thing to mention is that, yes, SARS is doing tax reforms, and so taxpayers are going to have to be even more on their toes to ensure that their tax submissions are accurate. But SARS has also been affected by state capture, and it's still trying to recover its capacity. So unfortunately, revenue is flowing away in the form of illicit financial flows and so forth. And that's also a big issue that's happening at the moment.
Well, definitely. But I think, again, it's all about getting the basics right, Kirsten. It's about getting the fundamentals right, because at the end of the day, it is about being efficient. It is about being effective, but also making sure that we've got the right systems. And more importantly, these systems are driven by people.
Absolutely. I think most people don't grumble paying their tax if they know that they're going to get efficient services and that there's going to be a social wage that supports the vulnerable in the country. And so, yes, it's about putting the people first and fixing up these issues in the procurement system so that we're not frustrated like we are currently.
Yes. Now, Kirsten, just looking at submissions, and I suppose you will be making comments, or the Justice Coalition and research organization will obviously get some input or even comment on the bill, and just to make sure that the government has basically, ticked all the blocks basically before this bill obviously becomes final.
Yes, the Budget Justice Coalition has actually already made a submission to the Treasury on the bill, and we've made extensive inputs as to how it can be strengthened. One of the areas that we're quite worried about is the implications for whistleblowers of not having defined the confidentiality. So it actually means that if, as a whistleblower, you would report issues related to procurement because of how the bill is stated. You could end up, if you're a service provider, you could end up being debarred. And that is really an unfortunate implication of the way the bill is worded currently. So we want things like that to be rectified. And we've also done a case study in which we looked at procurement red flags, just highlighting so that it's not about analyzing in a very dry manner, the kind of real issues that emerge in procurement, and then checking if the bill actually would address those kind of issues.
Well, Kirsten, thank you very much for that. We definitely will watch out. We will follow the space and see what comes out of it. But clearly, it is a major problem. And I see there is a comment from one of our listeners saying that is corruption only practiced in public service? If not, how are they interrelated? And that's an interesting topic on its own alone. But Kirsten, as always, we do appreciate your time. You have yourself a wonderful day, and please stay safe.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me on the show.
Right. That was Kirsten Pearson joining us this morning out of the Budget Justice Coalition and a research fellow with the Rural Health Advocacy Project. And this is a problem. And just this comment that has come through from Norman Rapolo saying that is corruption only practiced in public service? If not, how are they interrelated? They certainly are interrelated, because you have got a corruptor and a corruptee, because that's exactly what it is. And we've seen what has happened with Bosasa when Angelo Agrisi, obviously, and we know Bosasa is in the private sector, and how they had actually benefited from government tenders and the like. And yes, so it actually works both ways. But at the end of the day, the key question is, who is in control? Who is in control of the procurement process? Who is buying? Who is paying for those goods? And I think this is something that we should not lose sight of, because there have been just too much. There have been too many cases. And as Kirsten had pointed out, year in and year out, we've seen the Auditor General's report. And this, at the end of the day, because of a poor legislative environment. And that is why, it is important that the bill comes through, but at the same time, it should be proactive and having the right system. And obviously, with the bill, it should actually present itself as not being a disappointment or a missed opportunity, so that we can see exactly that the systems, whether it is just from a disclosure point of view, confidentiality, and at all stages, when one applies for a tender or when the government enters into a contract, it is centralized. It is making sure that the entire cycle or the entire process is monitored. It is transparent, and this is exactly what we are looking for. With that, we are heading straight for the news in a minute or so. And just to let you know what is still to come on the show this morning, we will be getting the financial update, but also taking a look at the build-up to the U.S. elections, and very interesting dynamics that have been playing out. And I think last week, if many of you saw that video clip that was doing its rounds, the Jews in support of Trump going through New York City, the fight, the trouble that had broken out, and really this election has now gone to another level in the United States of America. And also talking with Rahimullah Yousafzai at around 9:30 a.m., looking at the Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan taking the lead, asking leaders, world leaders, to act collectively to counter growing Islamophobia. And he actually rebuked French President Emmanuel Macron, where he accused Macron of encouraging Islamophobia. And also at the same time, when one looks at the reaction from right across the entire world, there has been quite a bit coming through from certain countries, in particular Also, we will be introducing you to the finalists this morning, Ahmed Patel, Fatima Musa, and Hussein Duma. And that is the Salam Media Quantum Private Game Reserve Competition. Stay with us. Don't go away.